we are God's children. Have you ever wondered what was going through the mind of St. John when he wrote that letter? John was filled with this sense of God's great love for us, the love that had manifested itself in Jesus. And all of a sudden it seems like he just realizes, and we are God's children. Think of what that must have meant for him in those days. Think of what it must have meant in the context of the Jewish leaders and scribes who were so interested in the law and following the law, and if you didn't follow the law, you would be punished. Or think of the Gentiles and their sense of the gods, how much of your life depended upon sort of fickle fate. We were just little ants scurrying on the face of the earth. There wasn't any real God who cared for us. And all of a sudden, it just simply dawns on John, we are God's children. It sinks into our hearts whenever we pray, Our Father. This recognition that God has embraced us into his own family, that he wants us to trust him, to know that he is the one who has loved us into his family. Well, tonight I would like to reflect a little bit with you on families, our families and God's family. But I want to begin by pointing out something that has been very striking to me, and that is how sometimes we get caught up in the notion of family as somehow this perfect unit of mom, dad, and children. And you know, if that's what your experience has been, God bless you. That's a great way to grow up in a family. But you know, more and more in our world today, that's not the reality for people. Some families break apart, some for good reasons, some for bad reasons. There are all kinds of different aspects to families today. And what I would like you to think about for a moment is not some stereotypical ideal of the family. I want you to think of the reality of families. Families are those units where people come together, they live together, and they care for one another. And that's what I would like to emphasize tonight. If somebody were to ask me, well, what do you mean by family? I would say that is a place where the people care for each other. So consequently, we could even say that we Redemptorists are a family. Maybe not always, but we try. And all of you living in your own homes, some of you alone, you think, well, does this apply to me? Of course it does, because family extends beyond what's in our own borders or our own walls. Family is where we care for one another. And that's what I would like you to reflect upon tonight, because it seems to me that in our society, we're becoming more negative, we're becoming more cynical, more jaded about all kinds of things, and the result is that we are overlooking some of the magnificence and beauty and wonder of our own lives and our own experiences. We have experienced all kinds of things in our families that we don't pay much attention to. Think of mothers and fathers when they first get used to each other in marriage, and they have to adjust to their other idiosyncrasies, and how they do that because they love one another. And then they kind of get comfortable with that, and then all of a sudden the children come along, and everything is totally changed. And so much of your energy in your life is focused upon that child or those children. And yet go back and think of when you and I were children. Think of what it was to be loved by our parents. When we were totally vulnerable, we needed them for everything, for food, for shelter, for love. I don't know of any parents that were perfect, but I know an awful lot of parents that were loving and are loving. And this is what I would like you to focus on this evening. Think of the gifts that are given, and think how hard sometimes those gifts are to give. I'm thinking, for example, of watching children grow, and a 2-year-old. A 2-year-old is really a sort of a self-centered, very selfish sometimes individual, trying to get mom and dad and the rest of the world manipulated to serve his or her needs. And I watch parents putting up with this, although every once in a while something sneaks out, I remember my sister one time, after a particularly difficult time with her oldest son, turned to me and said, "You know, it's a good thing God made 2-year-olds so cute, or none of them would live till they were 3. And yet, she, like all parents, has loved that child beyond that selfishness and into the teenager, the adult, the one that is able to become responsible, accountable. And this is because parents give the guidance and support. And don't confuse loving your children with simply a feeling. There are lots of times when loving your children means discipline. It means teaching them the hard lessons. It means helping them to grow up, to become responsible. And I will bet that every one of us could spend an hour here tonight just running our minds back over the many things that we've experienced, the lessons we've learned from our parents. And maybe one of the things that would happen would be we'd be filled with gratitude for the goodness and forget about those little issues that pop up. Yeah, there's always hurts. There's always those things where we feel we've been maybe treated unfairly. Put those aside. Think of the things where God's blessings have flowed to you through your family. At the end of Mass tonight, we're going to have an invitation to give a blessing to you and your families. But I want you to understand that if you are here with family members, it's a great opportunity for a blessing for you and for the family members that are not here. If you are here with your friends, that's a form of a family, and we would like you to come as well for a blessing. And there are some of you that maybe are by yourselves. Perhaps you could find another person and together come up and ask for a blessing. But that's a potential family. And what we're asking very simply is that we open our hearts to this God of infinite love and ask Him to help us to be the caring family members that He has called us to be.